Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here today. This is Nicole with Topaz. Today we are here for a quick tip webinar on how to make your water and dewdrop shimmer. Some of this information is going to be repeated from our tips and tricks webinar, but it's just a quick overview of the glow technique and how to really place that and make it realistic on your water and dewdrops. It's one of the most common questions we are getting about Topaz Star Effects, so we wanted to single this process out. So let's jump right on into the program. You should be looking at my screen right here. I want to show you some before and afters, and then we'll go into a couple of these images to check it out. So let me show you this before and after. Pay attention to the water, the actual reflection coming off of this sunset. Here's before, and here's after. It's not a huge difference, but again, it's all about making your water glimmer and shimmer and making it have that realistic glow. Again, here's before and after. Let's show you a couple before and afters as well. This is before for this rose image, and after. That one you can definitely see a larger difference in those dewdrops. I love this image. Here's before. You see a lot of the highlights over here in this particular part of the web, and after. Just a subtle glow to give your light a little bit of life. Here I brought in some highlights for this particular waterfall. Here's before and after. Oh, here I brought in some highlights for the water on this area right here. So here is before and after. Again, before and after. So let's take a look at a couple of these images real quick. Let's start off with this one. I'm going to get rid of this top copy and just have my background copy here for us. And one of the things that I always suggest is if you have a portion of your image that you want to put highlights on but not another portion, for example, if we took this entire image into Star Effects, because we have this sun up here and these clouds with the silver lining, if we take that into the program, it's actually going to recognize those light sources as well, not just the light sources that we want. And then the number of light sources or the number of effects that we get down here in our highlights on the water is going to be reduced because there's a limitation in Star Effects. You can only have 500 effects. So my suggestion here, if you have the opportunity, is to make a selection and take that in. So I'm just going to take my background copy, make a copy, get my tool over here, and just do a quick selection of the actual highlights on the water. So you can see that what has been selected by the marching ants here. And now I'm just going to go directly into Topaz Star Effects, go into Filter, Topaz Lab, Star Effects, and it will only take in that selection. So there automatically you see that most of this has been detected as highlights, the area that we really want it to be. So I'm going to be working over here in this right portion in our adjustment panel because this is just a very simple technique that the presets over here do not really go into as well. So we do have a couple water highlights here, presets for you. So you can start off with that and then come over here and maneuver it some more. Same thing with the water highlights too. So this is something that's pretty subtle. You can just come over and work with the size and the luminance of this effect if you want to, but I'm going to say reset all and just show you how easy this really is. I'm just going to go into my main adjustments and take my threshold down to 0. That's going to allow the program to recognize as many light sources as it possibly can, or as many areas that it can apply the effect as possible. The luminance is going to change the brightness, but we're not going to be working with the actual stars today. We're going to be working with glow and the size of the glow. So I'm just going to take the luminance down to 0, which will erase the effect altogether. And I'm going to come down to my additional effects and take my glow slider up to pretty high. I want it to really sparkle. So this is going to be way over the top. Yes, definitely. Now I'm going to come back up to my main adjustments and take my size down to an appropriate size for water highlights. I'm going to take it down to about 0.1. I think I'm probably going to take it down even further than this. But now I'm going to come into my color adjustments and use my saturation slider to pull from the actual color of the area that it's making the effect, just to make it much more natural. I'm going to make this pretty high. If it doesn't go high enough for you pulling from the actual area, you can use this temperature slider to make it a cooler or a warmer effect altogether, but this seems to be working pretty well. Here's before, here's after. Now you'll notice it's pretty obvious I've put something on here at this point, and I just want to take that down just a little bit more. So I'm going to come back into my main adjustments and go to my size slider. Take that down to about 0.07. And I'm going to come into my additional effects and take my glow all the way up to make it really bright. Okay, here's before, here's after. I'm pretty happy with this, and I'm going to say okay and take it back in. And it's as easy as that. The tip that I really want for you guys to focus on, especially when you have a bunch of highlights like you would in water reflections or dewdrops, is trying to take in a selection, because that will allow for you to really work on that particular reflective area as opposed to having to deal with taking out the effects within the sun and then the clouds and sky. So here's before and here's after. All right, let's take a look at this dewdrop image, and I'm going to get rid of the highlighted copy here, or the Star Effects copy. Now I did take this in to adjust to take it from this to here, so we are working on an adjusted layer, but that's all right, not a problem there. Now I'm just going to make a copy of my adjust layer. And because I know that there are so many highlights within this particular image, I am going to do the selection again. So I'm just going to select the top half of my image first, and then I'm going to do an inverse selection and take the bottom half in. So with that top half selected, I'm just going to go into Star Effects. And I would go through the exact same process, but we do have some dewdrop presets over here as well. So let's start off with that for this particular effect. Okay, if you'll notice, the dewdrop presets do have a little bit of a star attached to it. You can see right here really well in this particular area, you have this star coming through. And that's not necessarily something you want for a dewdrop. And when making these presets, originally I didn't realize that the main adjustments, you could actually have glow without having the star. So all you need to do is open up the main adjustments, take that luminance completely out, and it will remove that star effect. And now we're just working with the glow. Now you can take your size down. I'm going to take it pretty far down because I don't want it to be too obvious. Okay, and I'm going to take my color adjustments and take my saturation down. You know, it was having that really bright yellow type of feel to it. My temperature down as well. And then I'm going to take my glow up just to get that glow working pretty well. And let me show you before and after. Here's before. Here's after. Again, before and after. This is a little big for me still. It's a little, but I want you to be able to see it on your screen. Maybe we'll go down one little notch here. And I'll press OK. And then if you took in half of your image, the easiest way to, at least within Photoshop and Photoshop Elements, is just to take the inverse of your selection. You just go to the top menu within Photoshop and go to Select, and then select Inverse. We'll do that here in a second. As soon as this finishes processing, the more stars that you are putting into your image, and the way that happens is with the threshold slider, the more stars that it's processing, the longer it is going to take to process. So if you're just working on one sun flare, for example, it'd be a much easier and faster process than when you are working with 500 effects, which kind of makes sense. Now I would do the inverse and take it in and do the exact same thing. I'm going to not do that right now because I do want to have time for questions, but I'll show you this before and after. Here's before and after. You'll notice it really well and with these larger pearls. Here's before and after. All right, we have a couple minutes for questions. John asked a good question. He says, how can you copy the settings from your first selection on the web and apply it easily as a starting point in your inverse selection? Great question, John, and what I would do if I knew that I liked the effect that I was applying, and especially if I was going to be applying it to several areas of my image, I would save it as a preset. And if that's the only image that you ever apply that type of effect to, you can then delete that user-made preset afterwards. But it's going to be easier just to save that user-made preset, and you can do that by pressing Save at the bottom left of your preset panel. Tony says, will not the use of Lightroom give the same results if you're making a selection within the photo? Yes, if you're making the selection, you're going to be able to get... The reason I suggest doing a selection is because, especially in these type of images, you have so many highlights within this type of image and within a reflection on water. And for example, this particular image as well, there are tons of different highlights within the clouds, within the sky, within even up here in the white that it's going to recognize as being more like light sources than this reflective yellow and orange down here on your water. So because it has so many, it might not actually affect my water at all. So if I just take in my water like I did over here, then it knows that it's looking at that particular selection, and the brightest points in that particular selection will be considered your light sources. So it's just something to work with when you're working with something on water, because majority of the time you're going to have your sky there, whether it's daytime or nighttime. Your sky is going to be brighter usually. So it's just something a little trick that I'm finding is useful. You do have the availability to just reapply the exact same effect on your inverse. So for example, the last time we were in here, we could just take this selection, go up to Filter and go Topaz Star Effects, or Control or Command F. What it's going to do is apply the exact same effect that you just applied to the top, only on this selection. You are definitely able to do that, and now we have the entire image selected. Again, here's before, here's after, and you can tell down here it's the same thing. Now, if you take that other selection into Topaz Star Effects, you will not have those settings saved. So that is where the preset does come in. If you want to apply it to several areas of your image and you want to get back into the program to do that, you'll need to save a preset. Helene, yes, that was Control F. You can also use Command F on your Mac to replicate the effect, to just redo that effect on that next selection. Vincent asks a great question. He says, can we use the lasso tools to make our selection? So you definitely can, but an important thing to know about star effects, because I've been doing this exact same thing. Let's go to one where... Okay, I know this doesn't have to do with water or anything like this, but this is going to be a really good example for this. Let's just work on this bottom image here, and I'm just going to use my quick selection tool and get this building with all its lights. There we go, and get this whole skyline. Okay, now I'm going to take this selection into Star Effects. What it does is it takes the very top of your selection and it takes it in as a rectangle. So let's say we were looking at a very bright sun coming through these clouds. The program would recognize these as stars. So just be aware of that. And now, when you take it back into your host program, it won't be affected. This area will not be affected. So I hope you understand that. Press cancel. Michael, what happens if you exceed the 500-point maximum? It's not whether or not the picture exceeds it, it's just the limitation of the program. So you can definitely take a picture in there that has more than 500 areas that it's going to consider a light source. So this particular image does. So this particular tiny, scroll in here, these little light sources that are coming through the trees right here, even though those are light sources, if you take the entire image in, these are actually not recognized as being light sources because you have so many other brighter light sources within that image. It's going to be the limitation of the program. So if you have more than 500 and it's not recognizing certain light sources that you want it to recognize, again, that is why we suggest doing the selections, taking selections in as opposed to your entire image. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me here today for Quick Tip Thursday. Take care, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.